What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode. Today we're going to talk about Ford and GM, the company's plans for electrification, and whether or not I believe they will survive this economic crisis. A bunch of you requested a video about GM and Ford and their financials. I thought today was an excellent time to do it because we've just got this report from Reuters saying Detroit's near future based on SUVs, not EVs, production plans show. And I thought this was kind of a sort of super bummed me out to read this news, basically saying that the two biggest U.S. automakers will make more than 5 million SUVs and pickup trucks in 2026, but only about 320,000 electric vehicles, according to detailed production plans for North America, as seen by Reuters. So this is saying GM and Ford, it's 6 years from now, only plan to make 320,000 EVs combined. Just to put that in perspective, Tesla made over 360,000 just last year. So even 6 years from now, GM and Ford combined will still be smaller than Tesla. Pretty hard to wrap your head around that. And to see that they still plan on pumping out 5 million SUVs and pickup trucks, most of which are going to be burning fossil fuels. I mean, pretty disappointing to see and extremely ironic given the fact that GM just held their EV Investor Day. Ford just unveiled the Mach-E, both companies' management teams signaling that they're all in on electric vehicles, but that's just all talk and hype. In the automotive industry, you have to be planning your production years out in advance, and that'll dictate the sales mix of your vehicles. So to see GM and Ford planning such a little amount of electrification, to me, A, is a super big letdown as someone who wants to see electric vehicles take off, who thinks they're the future, but B, could be a huge strategic blunder that leaves them even further behind, but at a time when these companies are already struggling. So ignoring the current financial crisis, let's go into hypercharts here. You can see that GM and Ford have been struggling, pre-illness 19. So here's GM's revenue, gross profit, operating income. As you can see, revenue was the lowest it had been in years in Q4 2019, as well as gross profit also falling down dramatically. What did that lead to? GM's operating income, which hadn't been negative in years, goes to negative 554 million in Q4 2019. So once again, versus a positive operating profit of nearly $1 billion in Q4 2018 last year. So GM getting significantly less profitable once again before this entire economic crisis hit. If we go to Ford, you'll see something very similar. Where we also have, we can go to gross profit, see gross profit of the company declining, and then we can go to operating income for the past 2 quarters has gone negative here, negative 457 million versus a profit of 632 million in Q4 as well. So my point here is that GM and Ford heading into this economic crisis, we're already seeing their earnings fall off a cliff, more than $1 billion swing for each of those companies, the wrong way for operating income, going from pumping out, over $500 million in profit to losing nearly $500 million just in a year time. And I think this is all about to get worse. I mean, the current economic slowdown we're seeing is going to affect every single part of the economy. I think auto sales are going to get hit tremendously. We saw data coming out of China showed a huge decrease in automotive sales while the economy was shut down. I think we're going to see something very, very similar here where a lot less people are going to be buying cars. And this comes at a time when GM and Ford are really not going to be able to handle it. If you take a look at what these companies are doing, GM just put out a press release saying GM fortifies its balance sheet in response to COVID-19. GM today announced it intends to draw down approximately $16 billion in revolving credit facilities. So GM has to take on get an additional $16 billion worth of debt to be able to manage through this. Ford, something very similar. They suspended their dividend, withdraw 2020 guidance due to coronavirus. And if you'll see, they also said they would be drawing $15.4 billion on 2 different credit lines, and they would be withdrawing their dividend as well. Ford and GM stock under extreme pressure now. Both are hitting some of the lowest they've been in years on the back of this crisis, on the back of weak sales. And now we get news that their EV plans aren't even real. And I think, what I wanted to make this episode and boil down to is at a high level here, I think GM and Ford are at extreme risk for either a huge hit to their equity prices. They're going to have to do a huge amount of capital raises at really low prices. They might even need a bailout, or they might just straight up go bankrupt. That's how bad I think this is going to get for GM or Ford. Without getting too much into the weeds, and I think I could make a whole other episode on this, so let me know if you're interested, but GM and Ford are really more banks than they are car companies. These companies make a huge amount of revenue from their finance operations, which are basically, banking operations to allow people to finance cars. And so people are paying them all of these payments for leases of vehicles, and GM and Ford as collateral for these payments and for these entire income streams has the internal engine combustion vehicles say, okay, if you don't make your payments, at least we get the car. And so the entire value of their loan portfolios is predicated on the value of those internal combustion engine cars. If the economy crashes, if we go to electric faster than they're expecting, I think the value of these used internal combustion engine cars that all of a sudden no one needs is going to plummet, and then the entire structural situation of Ford and GM turns into a house of of cards. And so I think there is so many headwinds heading for GM and Ford right now. I see both of them already getting strained financially. They were already losing money before this. They're going to report multi-billions of dollars of losses here in Q1 and potentially Q2 as well. You have that, and also the fact that they're trying to transition to electric vehicles that aren't really profitable, but even that, they're sort of half-assing it. I don't know. I'm getting a really bad feeling that both of these companies are in serious trouble, and we're just scratching the surface of the financial distress. I think what the airline industries are going through of huge fixed costs, saying we're going to be in huge trouble and have to lay off a ton of people if we don't get bailouts today, is exactly the same situation that GM and Ford are going to be in if this goes on for another couple weeks. So that's just something I'm watching closely here, but wanted to update you all on my thoughts on these two companies. I think they are in huge trouble. While Tesla has a rock solid balance sheet, billions in cash, planning to get through a multi-quarter shutdown, GM and Ford are already drawing down $15 and $16 billion credit lines, suspending guidance in the middle of totally freaking out because their businesses were falling apart even before this started to happen. So that is what it is. It's never a good feeling to see these companies go bankrupt or struggle financially. There's so many jobs on the line, but that is what it is. This is the game of business. They haven't been innovating. They haven't been adapting. They have legacy products that are being disrupted, and that just is what it is. And we're witnessing what appears to be a slow motion train wreck and implosion of the US's two leading automakers, GM and Ford. Anyway, this is Hyperchange. Would love to know what you think in the comments below. Huge shout out to our Patreon supporters, producers, fun in the channel. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.